When we talk about fighting climate change, we often picture things like planting massive forests. But how do we really know those projects are doing good? Not just for the climate, but for the local communities and the wildlife, too. Well, that's where this incredibly important framework comes in. The Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standards, or, CCB for short. They're basically designed to make sure that when we take climate action, we get it right on all fronts. And that's the big question, isn't it? It's the core dilemma. A project might look amazing on paper, say protecting a huge area of forest. But what if doing that pushes a local community out of their home? Or what if it accidentally harms the very ecosystem it's supposed to be saving? That's exactly the kind of complex problem the CCB standards were built to solve. All right, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to look at the core problem, what these standards actually are, then we'll break down their three main pillars, how projects prove they're making a real impact, and finally, why this all matters so much. So let's start with the challenge itself. First up, the triple challenge. Because, to really get why these standards are so critical, you first have to understand the sheer scale of the issue they're trying to address. And the scale here is, it's huge. The IPCC, a top authority on this stuff, says that almost a quarter of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions come from how we use our land. Things like farming, forestry, you name it. Now, when you hear that, it tells you something really powerful. If we can just get land management right, the potential to make a positive difference is absolutely immense. This isn't just a side project. It's a massive part of the solution. So, if getting land use right is such a game changer, how do we make sure projects are actually well designed? This is where the CCB standards step in. They basically offer a clear blueprint for what good really looks like. And here's the thing. The CCB standards are not just about avoiding bad outcomes. Nope. They are all about designing projects that actively deliver net positive benefits across three really key areas. Think of it like a gold standard or a super high-quality seal of approval that guarantees a project is creating real, tangible, lasting value for the climate, for people, and for nature, all at the same time. But okay, what does that phrase, net positive benefits, actually mean when the rubber meets the road? Well, it all breaks down into three core pillars that are the absolute heart and soul of any CCB-certified project. This is the big idea right here. It's not enough for a project to just be good for the climate. It has to also be good for the local communities living there and for the biodiversity of the area. It's a package deal. To get that CCB stamp of approval, a project has to deliver incredible results on all three. So let's dig into each one. First, let's talk climate benefits. This is probably the one you'd expect, right? The project has to show, with real data, that it's making a measurable difference. That could mean it's preventing emissions from happening in the first place, like, say, helping landowners to not cut down a forest. Or it could be actively pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, like planting a brand new, thriving one. Second, and this is so important, community benefits. Climate action just can't come at the expense of people, period. A CCB project has to actively improve the lives and well-being of the local folks. This could be anything from creating new, sustainable jobs to making sure people have access to vital resources or even supporting local businesses, all while deeply respecting their culture and their rights. And finally, the third pillar, biodiversity benefits. The project has to be a true win for nature. So we're not just talking about planting a massive field of one type of tree just to suck up carbon. No way. We're talking about restoring a complex, healthy ecosystem with native species, protecting corridors for wildlife to roam, and conserving habitats for rare or threatened animals. Okay, so having these three amazing pillars is one thing, but you can't build them on shaky ground, right? They need a really solid foundation. So what are the deep down principles that make sure a project's impact is not only real, but also ethical? One of the most critical principles is proving that a project's impact is additional. This is a huge deal. It means the good things that are happening, like that forest being saved, would not have happened otherwise. Projects have to paint a clear picture of what the future would look like without them, which is often, a pretty grim scene of continued deforestation, and then compare that to the future with their project. That difference between the two, that's their real, true impact. And here's another ethical cornerstone, and it's all about respect. Free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC. This is a seriously powerful idea. It means that consent from local and indigenous communities has to be given freely, with zero pressure or manipulation. It has to be given before any work starts, and it has to be based on a full, clear understanding of all the potential risks and benefits. But most importantly, it means they have the genuine right to say no. This makes them true partners, not just bystanders. So the standards are clearly robust, but who's checking the homework, right? How do we actually know if a project is playing by these rules? That's where the super important step of independent audits comes in. Well, the process is incredibly rigorous and it has two key checkpoints. First, before a project even breaks ground, an independent auditor comes in and checks the design to make sure it's set up for success. That's called validation. Then, once the project is up and running, an auditor comes back, at least every 5 years, to verify that it's actually delivering on its promises. This whole process creates long-term accountability and ensures the benefits are real, not just theoretical. Now, when a project passes this tough audit, the carbon credits it produces get to have a special CCB label. This label is a massive signal to anyone looking to invest in or buy carbon credits. It basically screams, hey, these aren't just any carbon credits. These come from a top-tier project that is proven, audited, and verified to be great for the climate, for communities, and for nature. So, let's bring this all home. We've got these rigorous standards and a tough verification process. But why go through all that trouble? Why does this matter in the real world, and who actually benefits from setting such a high bar? Well, it turns out the benefits ripple out to pretty much everyone involved. The people running the projects, they can attract more investment. The investors and companies buying credits, they can confidently fund high-quality projects without worrying about controversy down the line. Governments can see real progress on their big sustainability goals. And of course, the planet gets the integrated, holistic solutions it so desperately needs. Solutions that really get that you just can't separate the climate from the people and ecosystems that depend on it. Ultimately, what the CCB standards do is they challenge all of us to think bigger than just counting carbon. They push us to ask a much better, much more important question whenever we look at a climate solution. Is this truly working for the whole picture, for the planet, for its people, and for all of its incredible biodiversity? Thanks for tuning in.